Welcome to the Unearthed Man podcast, the journey of becoming a conscious man, hosted by Milvo. Hey all, Milvo here, and welcome to episode 20 of the Unearthed Man podcast. I'd like to start by thanking Carl Hare for his honest and open account of his transcendental experiences on the podcast last week. I know it took a lot of courage for Carl to open up about the experiences that have taken place recently for him. I'd also like to thank him for choosing the Unearthed Man podcast as a channel to share those experiences for the first time. To my loyal listeners, again, thank you for continuing to support my podcast. And if this is the first time that you're listening in, then welcome aboard. So let's get into today's episode. My guest today has focused his life and career on creating environments where he helps people learn about themselves and each other, so that we all may share enchanting experiences. Self-awareness through experiential learning was a focus of his time working as a teacher, which then evolved to him working with businesses, creating thriving and flourishing cultures. Psychological safety through self-awareness and empathy is the essence of his work and practice. He is passionate about potential and opportunity that gathering people presents. His art is design and facilitate experiences whereby people truly connect on a deeper, more human, more intimate, more enchanted level. That may be through a beautifully orchestrated dinner party or a week-long company retreat that sparks some magic and transforms lives. Food, wine, and the communal experience of sharing a meal feature heavily in his work. There is something universally connecting about breaking bread with each other. This translates into the work he does through the design of experiences, where we are reminded of the fact that we are all connected and that in order to thrive, we must nurture and celebrate this complex web of interconnectedness that give our lives meaning. He is fascinated by people's stories and what we can learn from each other. Many of these stories are featured on his podcast, A Satisfied Mind. It's a place to explore what it means to be human, what matters most, and how we all might live a little more consciously and to love more fearlessly. Welcome to the Unearthed Man podcast, Mikey Ellis.
Milvo, thanks so much for having me. That's quite an introduction. I love that.
I think that that introduction for all the interactions I've had with you, Mikey, sums up exactly the man that you are. I think that's, I love that you have let me put it this way, I think you have a simplistic complexity about you, which is, you bring a whole lot of experiences and a whole lot to the table, but you do it so simplistically that, it's easy for people to get the message and get who you are.
Thank you. That's a really beautiful way to say that, and it's really hard, to sort of explain yourself or express kind of who you are and what you do. And I'm always fascinated by what other people say and witness. So a simplicity and complexity. I love the paradox of that. That's awesome. And that bio, by the way, it's the first time it's got a test run. So I had I sat in on a workshop with a wonderful guy and friend by the name of Dr. Jason Fox. Yep. And he hosted a workshop and it was called Enchanting Your Bio. And I'm like, oh, cool. Because I've always found it really hard to write about yourself in a bio, and, in a way that doesn't come across as, being too self-indulgent, but also, yes, being honest and authentic and communicating what it is that's true about you. And it's always hard to do that for yourself. And certainly this workshop was great. And he encouraged everybody to take on board what it is that he'd shared and then edit their bios and send it back to him. And he would then kind of provide some feedback. And the feedback that he provided was really wonderful. And so I incorporated some of that into that bio. So it's cool to see it get a test run.
Yeah, no, look, I loved it when you sent it through. I'm reading through it. I'm going, this is a great bio.
Awesome.
I love the feel and the flow that goes with that. And as I said just before, I think it does perfectly sum up who you are and the person that I've seen. For those, Mike and I have connected a bit, but it's actually been a lot of social media connecting. And so this is our first chance, be it via Zoom, to actually have a really true conversation. And I've been excited to have this conversation with Mikey for a while.
Likewise, mate.
So just on the point of connecting, I'm actually going to wind you back a little bit. And there is something that you and I both have in common, Mikey. And this is that we both know that my wife gives an awesome hug.
She sure does. She sure does.
And I'm not sure whether you'd like to share that or not, but I know there are things that happen on some of these workshops that we go to that tend to be within that workshop. But I believe that you and my beautiful wife Jackie had an amazing experience. I think it was on the bridge experience.
Yeah, I was talking about this earlier on today, and it was. I reckon it was this time. I think it was September last year. That September, October, around about this time.
Yeah.
Last year that I did the bridge experience and then extreme leadership, which is each of those are 2-day workshops facilitated by Preston Smiles and his wife Alexi Panos. And I'm so glad I did that workshop. I've done a lot of workshops and I've run a lot of workshops, and I was kind of thinking, well, is this another one? Do I really need to go? I mean, what am I going to learn that I haven't already experienced before? But it's truly transformational, and that's no understatement. And Jackie was part of where there were 70 odd people in the workshop, and we're split into groups throughout the weekend, and you really get to know that group and do a lot of intimate work with each other in that group. And Jackie was part of my group, and just a wonderful way to get to know somebody way beyond the superficial. Who are you? Where do you live? What do you do? Got a family, and what's your work, and so on. And we went deep. The whole group did, and plenty of hugs, and we needed them.
Yes.
But, it was really wonderful to get to know Jackie in that way at that time.
Yeah, it's we'd done probably similar to you, the couple of trips up to Queensland. The 2 weekends we'd only booked Jackie in to do bridge experience, and then we got to that end ceremony, and I just looked at her and I said, put the money aside. Would you come back next weekend? She said, yes, please. So we just signed her up. So
you were there for the graduation of that first weekend, were you?
Yeah, I was.
Oh, right.
Yes.
And you saw what happened. You saw how people would, the experience that they were expressing through that graduation, and then signed up at that time for the next weekend. That's awesome.
So we signed her up for that next weekend, and it was great because then we went back up again, which is probably the first time I started to work remotely, because I worked out of Brisbane was pretty much while Jackie was doing that experience, and we got to meet another beautiful lady, Erin Murphy, who we shared an apartment with actually on that weekend just to help her because she wanted to do the next weekend. And whilst doing that, we found out that Preston was then running Unleash the Beast the weekend after. So I signed up for Unleash the Beast. So we ended up 3 weekends in Brisbane, and between myself and Jackie, the most amazing, life-changing transformation that we'd been through, because, as you're just alluding to, how deep that's you go to, and how much of the, you just allow a lot of that, I suppose, stories and traumas and underlying elements that we've held on to come out.
Absolutely.
And for I'm not sure of your age, Mikey, but I'm in my 50s, and to have gone through that experience in my 50s, it was incredible, because you realize how much you've been holding on to, and how much you've maybe been pointing your fingers at parents and family and colleagues for what's going on. And all of a sudden you realize, actually, this is just me holding on to all this stuff and everything. And once you learn to release, the lightness and the freedom, I think, that comes out of that is pretty amazing.
Absolutely. Yep. Completely relate to that. And it's, those stories that we hold on to are they're embedded in our emotional conditioning, and in the narratives that we have embedded over so many years. And so it's really, really powerful to do some work that identifies and challenges the truth of those and of those stories, and just let them go. And there's a lot of physical, somatic work involved in that process. And I think that's one of the things I really enjoyed about those weekends was the physicality of it. It's because I can tend to be quite intellectual and and sort of think a lot about things, but there's no substitute for processing that, particularly when it's an emotional conditioning or emotional block. No substitute for processing that, emotionally and physically. And really powerful work.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I don't think I cried. I think I cried more on a 2-day weekend than I did for the 20 years leading up to that 2-day weekend. But that release is just so empowering and so enormous. So post that experience, so what's life look like for you? Having gone through a bit of that, that transformation, because the workshops are different. I've done the same to you, a lot of other, be it professional or personal workshops, but they never went to that level. What's the last 12 months actually look like for you now, Mikey, and your view on your professional life and how you see that and your personal life?
Yeah, great question. Well, the last 12 months have been a real exercise in letting go.
Yep.
I started the year, and I started the year with that intention. 2020 was always going to be. I had it in mind, and I had a vision for it probably the 5 years leading up to it. It for me, it was a bit of a watershed kind of year, and I just didn't know why, but I just knew that it was. I felt like, I set an intention for myself to experience a lot of the things that I had wanted to do for a long time. And so I thought, I'm going to work, that's my horizon. That's what I'm working towards. And so at the start of the year, I resigned from a job that I was doing. I was working as a culture strategist for a company based in Brisbane, and traveling around a lot to different companies on the east coast of Australia and over to Perth as well, and working with leaders and CEOs to help build good culture within their organizations, and loved that. But I felt there was something more for me to be doing and didn't know what that was. And it was in January that I resigned from that job with a view to just taking some time to maybe travel and maybe write some more. And I had this vision of living in the south of France and just writing a book and drinking rosé and eating cheese and, doing that for months on end. And that was the intention, it was a year to do the things that I've always wanted to do, but hadn't yet. And then, sort of COVID started to, become a thing, and obviously the opportunity to travel was limited, and so I just took that time from March through to June to really just sit with what's happening for me. And so that was, a really, again, an intentional period of time where I'm like, all right, cool. Well, I'm not going to be able to do the things I've planned to do. And I'm not going to be able to work in the way in which I wanted to. So I did, it was a real exercise in surrender.
Okay.
And that was those first few months from March through to about June. And I'm really grateful for that time and space and opportunity to just really reflect and just sit with what's coming up and not avoid it, not distract myself as much as I perhaps normally would, and it just felt like an opportunity to have a real reset. And that was kind of how I approached that time. And and then, man, so much has changed since then, and so much has changed personally and professionally. So, I met a wonderful woman who, has since become a partner, and she's in the US. So we met and haven't been able to see each other since then. So that's been a massive challenge and a massive opportunity to surrender and let go to expectations and how we'd like to be, in a relationship. So that personally, that's been a big part of the last 6 months for me, and professionally, I've got a great job at the moment working for Koala, and I get to do that remotely, so I can work from wherever I am, which has really been great to have that professional focus to be able to do some good work. But man, it's just been like fucking everything's just been flipped on its head, and it's been a real process of letting go and surrendering and allowing and just seeing what comes up. Feels like I've just been dredging the swamp, draining the swamp and getting down to what's all the fears and all the stuff that's kind of down there, which only happens when you've got time to really allow that process to happen. And so, the catalyst for that, was probably had a lot to do with the workshop, Extreme Leadership and the Bridge. And everything's changed in the last 12 months. to cut a long story short, everything's changed, and I've changed a lot as well.
Yeah. There's a word I want to touch on that you've just used a few times then, because I think people have varying connotations of the word, and the word surrender. And I think it's because, we grew up watching Western movies or war movies, and it was seen as an act of, being defeated. I surrender. You've overpowered me. I've been defeated. And it can have a negative connotation because, people then attach that to weakness or, someone else had the victory. Your view on the word surrender and how that works for you in this light.
It's really important to clarify the context and what is being surrendered. I'm not surrendering my life as you would I'm not surrendering my freedom as you would in a movie, the context you're referring to. I'm not surrendering any of that. What I'm surrendering and letting go of is my attachment to ego.
Yes.
That's the conscious act of surrender. And what happens as a result of that, what happens as a result of ego and the triggers, just surrendering, I'm surrendering my conditioned responses to ego and triggers as much as I can. And that's an constantly evolving and ever evolving, never ending process. But I'm trying to at least surrender my attachment to ego, my attachment to anything that's not love, anything that's not a loving response. And it's a big thing to do, and I'm really just finding my way one sort of step at a time. But that's what I'm surrendering. That's what it feels like I'm surrendering, is my attachment to things. And in doing that, it's not a giving up. It's actually an allowing of what's beneath that, beyond that, ever a kind of abiding, which is just this abundance and love and peace and presence and a kind of calm certainty that comes with that. So I see it less as a giving up and more of a making way for.
Yes.
Instead.
Yeah. And I love that. For me, what a lot of that sits in there is it's actually, and I think you're right, it's letting go of the fear, because it's the fear that constrains us and holds us back. It's the fear of, but I've defined who I am. But once you actually surrender the fact that, or be aware of the fact that most of our decisions are actually decisions based on fear. In fact, I'd argue every decision we make is based on fear. We take the path of least scariness in a lot of situations, and you look at people, some people will cross the road anywhere, some people wait for the green man to go, and ultimately deep down, that's just someone conditioned them that if you actually went across on a red man, you would get in trouble. And I fear getting in trouble, just little things like that. And learning to surrender into the fact that fear does not have to dictate our life and dictate how we operate. And we can make a lot of conscious choices and conscious awareness about those decisions that we're making, I think can really free us up to start to be able to move forward as people.
Totally.
And I love, I use the word love. I like how you went to, it's surrendering into love and having the courage just to always trust love. Because I think over a period of time, again, with that conditioning, we're taught that, sure, you can love something, but there's the fear of being hurt from that. And if you can, again, drop away from that and go, no, love is always true. And it starts with myself. And as long as I have true love with myself, then no one else can break that through. There is no other hurt, because that's your fear that you've got and everything else, and how we can break that out as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think two massive themes there of fear and love. And I've become, I think fear is something to for me, it's been about understanding first. It's having an awareness of it, then an understanding of it. And then I've got an opportunity to choose. And so awareness and understanding. You talked about some environmental conditioning or societal conditioning behavioral conditioning that we have around, triggers and responses. Crossing the road, see a green light, go, red light, stop. That's an environmental sort of behavioral conditioning. But as human beings, we've got millions of years of biological conditioning, and the hardware that we're using to make our way in this world is pretty old.
Yes.
And our operating system needs an upgrade. But our brains and our bodies and our nervous system is literally conditioned to avoid anything that represents a threat to us. And there's just so many layers of conditioning that are embedded in our embodied experience of the world that we have now, and we are completely unaware of so much of that, of so much of those fear responses. So for me, it's been about understanding, that physiological response, the emotional response, that the nervous response that's going on, and then the story that I'm telling myself about that, to just question it and go, is this true? Is what I'm feeling and what I'm making that mean, is it true? And, I've then, practice that I've really been working on is questioning, and then questioning whether something is true, if it's a fear, or if I'm, feeling anxious or nervous or fearful about something, and then just spending some time, like getting really still and checking with my heart, and then asking what my heart says, which for me is my heart is just it's kind of it's a messenger for love. And when I talk about love, I'm talking about universal love, not, romantic love necessarily. Yes. And then just going, cool, okay, this is what my head and my body is saying, because that's what it's conditioned to do. It's how it's, evolved to survive over hundreds of thousands of years as a human being. And here's also what my heart and love and my soul, and something other than my biological hardware, that's what it's saying. And so then I get to go, well, which one am I going to trust? Which one do I trust? And then the work. That's where the surrender comes in. That's where that's where the trust comes in. That's the work. That's the work. It's been my job this last 12 months as a full-time occupation. It's awesome.
And I love that. So just out of interest, because we sort of connected since in the last 12 months. Was there a level of content that you were putting out in different social medias prior to that 12 months? If it was, what's the difference in the content that you're now putting out? Because I just see a lot of really good, beautiful messaging, some really good thought-provoking messaging, but the thought-provoking messaging is just exactly what you spoke about there, about where is this thinking coming from for you? Are you coming off the old you, or are you really digging deep and thinking about what's your heart telling you? So has that evolved over a period of time for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It sure has. And it's a timely question. I'm sitting in an apartment which I bought 10 years ago, and I'm just sold it. So I'm just cleaning it out and just sort of having this last kind of couple of days here. And I'm reminiscing a lot. And this table that I'm sitting at the moment, I used to sit at, and I would record videos, and I'd record wine reviews. And at the time, I just started a coaching business, and I was a teacher before that. So I thought, I'm going to give this coaching a go and see, because I was always interested in personal development. And I was always cranking out heaps of content, always. It's something I've always loved to do, is just share and write and communicate and have these conversations. And so I was always cranking out plenty of content. But I look back at that now and I'm like, shit, I just feel very naive. It feels very naive. Well-intentioned, but also there was well-intentioned, but there's also there was a lack of authenticity in what I was saying then compared to what I'm saying now, because I didn't know then what I know now.
Yes.
And I don't sort of judge myself for it, but I can certainly notice the difference. The difference now is that I'm a lot more conscious of what integrity means. And if I'm not living what it is that I'm talking about, then I don't feel like I have any right to communicate that and expect anybody to listen, because that's what bothers me a lot about what I see on just out in the world with people talking about stuff that they don't have any real experience of. It's not to say that you can't talk about stuff you've not had an experience of, but if you're wanting to support people or help people, or if you're encouraging them or supporting them through, to evolve their way of thinking or being, then I feel like, personally, at least for me, I feel like I need to be walking the talk.
Yep.
And and that's as I said before, it's an ever evolving process. But I want to be in the arena, not in the cheap seats, just throwing cheap shots, or pretending like I know what I'm talking about when I actually haven't done the work. And so I feel like the difference for me now is I'm a lot more. My hands are a lot more dirty. I've rolled the sleeves up a bit further, and I'm doing more of what it is that I'm talking about than I have done in the past. And that integrity has become a massive piece for me.
I fully agree, and I think that's where I've landed as well. I talk a lot about, and the theme is always spiritual, emotional, physical, and mental. But if I'm actually not doing those elements myself, how can I be talking to others about doing it? So, so now I've brought in a meditation practice, and I've brought in, I've always been, from a vegetarian or plant-based, but always been pretty healthy in what I've eaten. But it's funny, there's a couple of guys at work, we just catch up every Friday, and they call it the Milvo Fat Camp, because, just trying to help them along in what they're doing. But during the week, like I'm having pizzas and I'm having chocolates and everything else. And even now I'm going, hang on, I'm out of alignment with my own integrity here. So, we're getting our son to actually, because he's a fitness freak, to create an actual fitness program for us. So I know that, on the physical side, I can get my body in better shape. I can actually, so mentally, I'm reading lots of books. Spiritually, I'm doing the meditation. Emotionally, yes, I'm doing the work, and as you were saying earlier, sitting with where something pops up with that conditioning, sitting with it. So I feel the same, that for me to have authenticity in the messaging and authenticity in the podcast and authenticity in what's happening, I have to be going through it myself, so I can say, yeah, I know what you mean, because that was the struggle I had. I was eating the pizza, I was eating the chocolate, I was cheating the system, but I'm not cheating you, I'm just cheating me. And the books I'm currently reading at the moment it's all about the 4 agreements, and that whole suite of books. Really amazing, given that they're based on 3,000 odd years of wisdom.
Yep.
And one of the things about self-love he talked about physical self-love is, you have to love every cell of your body. Like, it gets down to that very integral level of every cell that makes you, the matter that's making you up, which is an energetic being on itself. Do you love every single cell? And as soon as I think about that, I'm going, yeah, and I'm feeding them crap. So yeah, how true am I really as I'm going on this journey if I'm not even getting down to the cellular level by putting the right food into my body and the right, liquids and everything else? And I'm not saying that we should just go water only and just having lettuce. We've got to have fun and enjoy our lives. But it's just that level of thinking as well that I'm starting to question, am I really how much further am I going on this integrity piece? And you realize how far you can continue to go. And it doesn't mean you become a OCD about this world. You still go out there and have your fun and everything else, but it's just having an awareness, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And everyone's got different values around what matters to them, and for some it's health, and others it's lifestyle, and that might involve, and for me it's a balance. I love it. Last night I treated myself to a bloody delicious steak and a couple of glasses of wine, and it feels good. And then the rest of the week I'm eating really, really healthy and really clean. But I think the point there is that we have to be doing the work, because I've read so many books and done so many workshops, read a lot and learned a lot, but nothing matters and nothing changes until you start, acting on what it is that you've learning. I think that's the point. I think that's the tipping point for a lot of this work is when you start doing the work.
Yes,
You know,
correct.
yeah, and that's when the shit hits the fan, because you're having what you're faced with changing a lifetime of conditioning, and so yeah, I think that's been one of the key sort of significant tipping points to me too, is just doing the work and like applying what it is that I know. And we don't need to know much. We don't need to know as much as we consume when it comes to information.
Correct.
That's a note to myself to keep reminding myself that I need to watch another YouTube video. I don't need to read another book. Just apply what it is that you know. And that's the work, and I think that's where the authority comes from. And I'm not saying I have that authority, but the people that I respect are the ones that have done the work. And in whatever field I'm looking at growing or developing. And so, that's the key. We get this quick fix of watching an inspirational video and, thinking about how wonderful our life's going to be tomorrow when we start doing all these things. And then tomorrow comes around and nothing changes. And so, the work is hard because it's a lot of unconditioning to do.
Yeah. And look, and that's what the thing is too, is that a behavior is something you can see. And so that's the congruence between the words and the behavior. And the one thing that I see from you, Mikey, all the time is that, that the very clear videos with a timestamp of sunrise, sunset, the sound of the waves, the sound of that connecting back into, the earth that, you've woken up and the sun's turned up. Now, the sun's always there, but it's our perception that we wake up, the sun rises type of thing. But I see you having that and that connectivity back into, the energy and the universe that's around you, and just being present in those beautiful moments as that sun, tips over the horizon and disappears again on a daily basis. And I can see that's really sits well with you, and it feels like it's becoming a really integral part of what you're doing as well.
Yeah, thanks for acknowledging that. And it's interesting. It has, and I've been connecting a lot more with my body and aware of its needs, and in doing so, connecting. I've had the privilege to connect a lot more with nature over the last few months because I've been living near the coast. And I just started getting up really early one day, and I don't know how this happened, but I've been staying with my parents the last few months, and there's this weird kind of role reversal whereby they're staying up, later and they're binge watching Outlander at the moment on Netflix, and they're watching 3 or 4 episodes a night, and it comes like 7:30. I'm like, oh, time for me to go to bed. I'm tired, so I'm off to bed, and I'm up, sort of 4:30 in the morning. But what I'm finding is, amongst all the uncertainty and all the chaos and all the restrictions and the lack of freedom, I've felt like I kind of crave freedom, right? And I felt quite stuck by that. So I just started going to the beach first thing in the morning and exercising. I do some breath work, I'll meditate, and then I'll witness the sunrise, and then I'll go for a swim. And just that just helps connect me to a physical abundance. Just being in the ocean helps me realize that, oh man, I'm connected to so much more than what it is I think I need, that I can't have, So
yes.
It's been really wonderful, and it's just something that has changed. But that routine has really changed a lot of things. It's changed what I eat. It's changed what I drink or don't drink now, because I'm like, I don't want to have too many drinks of a night, because I'm going to feel like shit when I wake up and go for a run in the morning. And so, that reconnecting to nature, and this is another tangent we can go on, but I feel like our world is literally screaming out for us to reconnect with it, so we can stop fucking screwing it up.
Yes.
And unless we are connected to it, we don't really. I think we take it for granted and just don't realize how precious and fundamental it is to our survival. And not only should we do what we can to save it from the path of destruction we've set upon, not only should we, but we must, and it's just a non-negotiable. So, myself reconnecting to nature has really helped to put some things in perspective.
Yeah, and I love that. There's so Jackie and I have been doing a routine now for a while where we get up, go through a routine. But the way we finish before I start work is we have a cacao. So there's a guy, Seth Slade, who's basically sells this. It's from his family's heritage, but this Samoan cacao. And it's beautiful. So every morning we sit out on a balcony and there's a set of trees near us. And, I just sit there and look, and it's interesting because we've just come out of, winter, and they were deciduous trees. So it's just blank. And within a matter of a month, there's this beautiful green, luscious leaves back on these trees. And I can sit there and just watch them for ages. And then you see the bird life appearing and everything else. And, for me, that half an hour that we're just sitting out there, we're probably having a conversation, but it's just the fresh air on your face, watching the leaves, the trees, and you go, they don't give a shit about some presidential election. They don't give a shit about all this other stuff. They just know who they are. They're just a tree. And they know that to survive, they will shed once a year. They will go through this surrendering process. They'll let the leaves drop off, and then next year they'll have regrowth, and then they'll start again. And you sit there and go, wow, we could just do that.
We have so much to learn. We have so much to learn. And the answers are in the rhythms and the patterns and the cycles and the wisdom and the symbiotic way in which everything coexists. I mean, there's so much for us to learn from nature and in communion with nature, and through our natural state of being as well, which we are so far disconnected from in the way in which most of us live, and I understand that not everyone can have the privilege to be out in nature on the daily, but there's still a lot we can do just to reconnect with ourselves in a physical state.
I must admit, I haven't been to the beach for a while now. I mean, we go down to Port Melbourne. I call a beach a place where you can actually surf, not a bay, right? I struggle with rivers and the bay, right? I'm a true surf guy. But the one thing that's dropped in with me recently in this whole thing is I see the ocean breathing. And the way I put it is that when the wave comes in and it rolls over, that's just the out breath. And then you watch the water disappear back and it sucks itself back in under again. And that's the in breath. Then the wave falls over and that's the out breath. And if you sit there and go, that's just me breathing in and out. The ocean is just breathing in and out with the waves rolling every single day. Then you look at the power that the moon has on the tide, and the fact that, and I think we spoke to Brendan Durrell about this, which is if we're 70% water, and we have the tide, the moon has the ability to move that mass amount of water, then it can do the same for us. So if we don't think we're not impacted by the energy, the moon, how the earth moves, how the ocean moves, then, that's true connection for me. It's just understanding that we are just connected to this wider energy source. And again, we could either resist it or we could just surrender to it and just go, I'm just going to run with it and just allow it. If that's what's happening energetically, then I'm just going to go with it. And just as soon as you surrender, the resistance is gone and it becomes free flowing.
Well, it's always there, that energy and that connection and that flow. It's always there. But for me, it feels like there's just been so many layers of, so many layers that are protecting or hiding or masking that connection. And it's layers, and those layers are sort of maybe literal, but probably more figurative or metaphorical. Like the layers of distraction, layers of disconnection. And so it's not until you're sitting by the ocean and you become like, it really helps to emotionally regulate me, just sitting and watching the waves come in and out, and being in the ocean and just being taken by the swell or by the movement of the water is such an emotionally regulating experience. And so, we have access to that. And you talk about, the planets, and I mean, there is on a spectrum of consciousness, we are operating on a really narrow bandwidth. And you look at how animals communicate, you look at how trees and plants, insects communicate and how they operate. You look at the intuitive guidance of animals when it comes, and birds and insects when it comes to their migratory patterns, and we don't fucking understand any of this because we're not accessing that sort of bandwidth of consciousness, but it's there. And it just blows my mind of, the potential that we have when we start to connect with some more of that intelligence that is in us, part of us, and part of the world around us. But as I said, it's like shit. It's like having it's been like the Michelin Man with all these layers on. It's like you got to shed this layer of, drinking to numb yourself, or distractions to make you feel good. So you've got to get rid of all that shit first, and all the condition that comes from just craving those to access that connection, and then start to experience some of the incredible power, what that feels like to be connected. That's a beautiful thing, and so that's something I'll never stop working towards, cultivating greater depths of connection.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I see that as my journey. My journey is constantly connecting and connecting and connecting, and how can I be more connected? And it's on a people front, but from a love front, and from a nature front, from the energy front, and everything else is where I want to go. I'm going to go a slight left hand, Mikey, because I think it'd be very rude of me if we didn't actually talk about your wonderful podcast, A Satisfied Mind. I think it's an amazing. I am going to fess up very early on this one, and that is, I remember because you started about 3 or 4 weeks before I did, and I love the fact you were doing it. I'm like, cool. Mike is just going to do a cracking podcast, and it is. I think it's amazing. I love the storytelling and just the calming nature about how you do your podcast. I absolutely love, and to be honest, I've modeled some of my stuff off what you do as well. So I'm glad you went first. But I remember getting to 500 downloads, and I'm like, oh, awesome. I've hit 500 downloads. And you sent a beautiful message to me saying, congratulations. And I think about 2 weeks later, you've come out and said, I've hit 2,000 downloads. I'm like, that's awesome. And part of my ego is like, fuck. But the other part of me is like, that's just wonderful. And I was so excited for the fact that, that you just started this, that you said, I'm going to have a go at it, and you're getting all these amazing people listening in and downloads. So let's talk a bit about your podcast and, what generated it and how you're finding it.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for acknowledging that and the impact that it has on you. It's awesome. I mean, a couple of things. First thing on the downloads, I don't look at numbers. If somebody's listening, that's awesome. For me, the thing I love about the podcast is having the conversation, and it's quite a selfish endeavor because I'm having conversations with people that I want to learn more about, and I want to share their story because I've always really enjoyed conversations with people, like deep kind of conversations with people, and I'm loving that, and the fact that other people are listening to it is awesome. So the whole numbers and downloads things, I don't even look at it, and until the podcast people send you an email with a thing. I'm like, oh fuck, that's pretty cool. People are listening. That's awesome. Oh, man, I wanted to do a podcast for the last couple of years, but it never felt quite right because it felt like I was doing it for a purpose other than what felt really authentic. I felt like I should have a niche, or I should be talking about something in particular, and I'm like, it just all felt a bit contrived. And then it got to, I started a couple, when it went an episode or two deep, and they're like, no, that doesn't feel right. It just felt like too much like I was trying to do it for the wrong reasons. But when I started A Satisfied Mind, it was like, you know what? I feel like I love listening to conversations where I learn more about myself through hearing people talk about their experiences. And so I'm fortunate enough to have wonderful family and friends and people that I know who just have so much to share that I learn from, that I really resonate with and just learn about myself through. So I thought, well, I might start having some of these conversations. And I also feel like we talk about I feel like we just don't talk about the stuff that matters enough. So I wanted to really just cut not straight to, I think there's a respectful kind of evolution and a trust that's necessary to build before you can share what's vulnerable. I think it's appropriate to have those kind of boundaries and establish that trust first. But, the conversations, it's just stories. I mean, we are all just bombarded with content. And I look at people who are, doing really cool stuff, and I think, fuck, maybe I should be doing that, but that's not me. And the people that I resonate with most are the people who are just ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I think we are all ordinary people who are doing, have done, and will do extraordinary things. And I really didn't want to talk to, kind of celebrities. I really didn't want to talk to people who have, kind of made it, and then for them to tell their story about, kind of how they've made it. It's not that I'm averse to that, but I think there is so much gold in people who don't think they've got a story, but do. And that's what's really relatable, I think. Yeah. So I've had conversations with my sister, with my dad, with family members, and people who have just done some cool shit. And I'm like, that's awesome. I'd love to hear more about that. And so we have the conversation, and it's really good fun, and I'm really, really enjoying
it. And I love that. So thanks for sharing. And I think you touched on a point there. You and I spoke, before we jumped onto here. And one of the things that was talked about was the fact that I love every weekend getting an opportunity to sit on a chat for an hour. And my question would be to myself, would I do that if I wasn't doing the podcast? And then the next question is, well, why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I just try and connect with these people and say, hey, look, it's not going to come out of the podcast or anything else, but I really like what you're doing and I really want to do. Can we connect and just chat for an hour? And it's really interesting even thinking about that I'm leveraging a mechanism, a podcast. And to the degree, I'm a bit similar to you. I rarely go back. I'll see who's done what, but I don't spend a lot of time. It's like if 20 people listen to it, then awesome, 20 people listen to it. And if one person got something out of it, that's even awesome. But I come off every time I have these conversations, and I'm so lit and I'm so full of buzz and energy because I've just had a chance to sit down and have a wonderful conversation. And I think the reflection is that when I was been doing a lot of my development stuff, there was one thing I had to do was ring up 4 people and actually get them to give me feedback. It took me 4 hours to come up with 4 people. Right. And so I think there's probably a lot of stuff happening now that, there's the mask of I'm a podcaster. Will you come on and have a chat? But it's all like, would I actually even just ring up those guys and say, hey, look, you reckon you'd be up for a chat for an hour? And wonder whether any of us would do that. How much we do use a different forum. So to be honest, that's just popped into my mind there, Mikey. So there's some things that have dropped with that. But yeah, as I said, I do love the podcast. The one thing I feel is missing between our conversation here is that you stopping and describing the flavor of the red wine that you're consuming.
Actually, that's right. I started doing that. I forgot. No, it's not that I forgot. It's just like I thought, fuck, if I drink wine every time I do a podcast, I'm doing them daily now. That might not end so well. But that's really interesting. I've completely forgot about that. The first few conversations was always in the context of, over a drink, because that's when I would typically have great conversations with people is over dinner, or over a bottle of wine or a glass of wine. That's something I really miss doing and I love doing. And so, yeah, thanks for reminding me of that. I'm going to bring it back.
and the other one that I listened to was, I think you also asked one point in time, I think it was one, maybe I don't need to be drinking as much wine and it's like 10 in the morning or something. So maybe someone give me a cup of tea? Like, what's the best tea that people are drinking? And give me some ideas. So I love that as well. Yeah,
well, I remember having mentioned Jason Fox earlier on in this conversation, and he was a guest a few months back now, and it was a Friday afternoon. I think it was 11 o'clock. Might have even been midday if we were lucky. But he loves a whiskey, and I love a Negroni, and so we thought, is it? It's too early. Like, I don't know, it's not even daylight saving somewhere. And so we had a drink, and as I said, it's a really nice way just to kind of connect. And it doesn't have to be booze. It can be a cup of tea or a green smoothie or a kombucha or whatever it is you're into.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. No, that's cool. So look, I think that's probably, you've been very generous with your time, Mikey. So
Pleasure,
I really appreciate
Great conversation.
I've actually really enjoyed the conversation. So all the guys, because, this is generally focused on, as you said, just guys learning that it's okay to have a chat. It's okay to actually, surrender into some of the conditioning and what's going on, and just get over. So any sort of last thoughts or, any message for, any guys who are starting to go, do I really reach into this world of becoming self-aware, and, or what comes out of it, and your thoughts on that?
Oh man, this would be a whole nother conversation. And I love this topic. I used to, when I was a teacher, I was really focused on, and I did a lot of work around boys' education and helping understand boys' needs. And I say that not to, to make it a gendered issue. However, I felt like certainly my experience growing up as a boy was, and my experience of education was completely underwhelming and flawed. So as a teacher, I really wanted to understand not just the differentiated needs between genders, because as I said, there's a real spectrum. And it's certainly not binary, but I really felt like the system that I was working in was failing kids, full stop. And so I really explored a lot of my own understanding of masculinity and what that means. And so my kind of experience was, again, it's an unconditioning. It's looking at what's subtle and not so subtle, what overt conditioning we are subject to, and subjecting kids and men and women to, when it comes to gender stereotypes and what it means to be a boy or a man or a girl or a woman, or any other way in which you would identify. What I love is we're starting to break down some of those, and we're continuing to break down some of those stereotypes, which have made it have been a blocker for men to connect to themselves and to each other. Not because we're not biologically designed and driven to do that, but just because to a large extent, the culture and the society in which I grew up, at least, didn't really facilitate that, encourage that, enable that. And so, and men are suffering, and women are suffering. We're all suffering because we just have these fucked up expectations of what we should be doing based on whatever, however we identify ourselves and each other. And so, I'd love to just continue the conversation around self-awareness and what that means, separate to or independent of the conditioning that we grow up with. And everybody's got their own, conditioning and their own influences and inputs to help make them who they are. But beyond that, there's something really universal that for me has been a real journey to understand, and it's been the best thing I've done is devote a lot of my life to that work of self-awareness. And for men, I just encourage them to learn more about themselves and lean into the vulnerability that comes with that, because it is the ultimate strength, I believe. Self-awareness and the certainty, the clarity, the confidence that comes from knowing who you are beyond your ego. That's true strength. That's true courage, and that I believe is only accessible. The cost of that, or the price you pay, is to be vulnerable, and I'm all for it. I'm here to redefine what vulnerability looks like and is for men particularly. And so, conversations like this and the work you're doing helps that. And I want to thank you for the work you're doing and acknowledge you and your podcast, the conversations you have, the videos you put out on Instagram. you can't be what you can't see, and I love that there's a lot more diversity in the conversation around men and masculinity, and that this work and you contributing to that conversation is really, really valuable. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for enabling these conversations. I hope it just provides someone with a alternative perspective that they might not have had otherwise, because I know that conversations like this has certainly helped me in the past.
Yeah, and I think it's an awesome message, and in learning to take a compliment, thank you for your feedback. I appreciate that. It's easy.
We've got to sorry to interrupt, but we've got to do this more, right? How many of us how many people are just doing their thing and it's really fucking awesome, and wondering whether it's of value to anyone. And we just need to be, I'm all for like just lavishing just encouragement on people for doing the thing that they want to do, and that they love doing, because it's not a competition. It doesn't have to be good. It just has to be an expression of who you are and your creativity. And so we're not great at accepting and receiving praise or validation, but I think we've got to change that. And the one way in which we can do that is just by dishing out more of it.
Yes.
So I'm going to love up on you and all the work you're doing. So get used to receiving it.
No, look, again, thanks, Mikey. I really appreciate that feedback. As you know, when you sit behind a microphone on a podcast, sometimes a lot doesn't come back and you just don't know, but I think you're right. I know we're trying to close this out, but to get back to an earlier point, if you were in alignment with your own integrity and you just know that this is the right thing and it's your truth and you know that that's the right message to be putting out, you'll just do it. And you know that the right person at the right time will hear the right message and it'll make sense for them. And that's sort of, that's what keeps me going, that I know that the people who are meant to hear this message will hear this message one way or another. It'll come out and they'll go, and something will drop for them. And that could help them get back to the integrity about who they need to be. And for me, that's that's awesome.
Yeah. And look, even if you don't know what's true for you, for me, for a long time, and even now, like, I've always gone, well, hang on, what's my purpose? Fuck, what's this thing I'm supposed to know that I'm meant to do for the rest? I don't know what it is. Yeah. I don't know for certain. And if I do, I know that it's changing and it's constantly evolving. So I think sometimes too, a lot of people, and myself included in the past, have waited to get it right to say something, or waited to get it right before creating something. And that's just not how it works for some people. For some people, myself included, it's almost like I'm just going to have to try everything and see what feels good. And so if you're wondering whether you've got something to say or some art to create, I was talking to a friend this morning who's an artist, at a cafe, and I hadn't seen him for a few years. And I'm like, fuck, it's just awesome that you're doing what you're doing. And he's like, oh, really? So show me some of your work. I'm like, fuck, that's amazing. For some people, you just don't you don't know who it's for, and it doesn't actually matter who it's for. If you feel compelled, feel a desire to do something, just fucking do it, and that's the only way to learn, is through putting yourself out there and having a crack.
I couldn't agree more. And the one thing that will stop you is back on that ego question. It's just that ego saying, but someone may not like this. And I'm like, oh, fuck it. If you don't like it, then that's fine, because you didn't. I never asked you to, and you didn't have to.
I think we care more about what other people think, and other people don't actually think about us as much as we think they do.
Correct.
I think the truth is nobody actually cares about us as much as we think they do.
Yeah.
And what a waste of a life that is when we're constantly modifying everything we do based on what we think people are going to say, or even what they do say, when they just don't actually really care that much. Like, they just don't. I don't care if I've got an opinion, or if I don't like something, and if I say it, I don't care that much about it. But those voices are amplified at the moment through social media, and we just tend to make a bigger deal about it than it actually is, and nobody really cares, so just fucking do it anyway. That's what I reckon. As long as you're not an arsehole or being, you're not, so long as you have some respect for others when you're doing whatever it is you're doing, I think we can do with a bit more diversity of creative expression and opinions and perspectives.
Yes, I fully agree. So we will wrap up there because it's easier for us to keep talking, I feel. So
I reckon we could.
Thanks, Mikey. Thanks again for being generous with your time this morning. I really appreciate you coming on, and you enjoy the beautiful day that's, I'm sure, North New South Wales or South Queensland's going to offer you this time of year.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Milvo, and again, keep up the good work. You're doing something that really matters and has an impact on people's lives. So thank you.
Cheers. Appreciate it, mate. Catch you later.
See you, mate.
So that was the wonderful, beautiful Mikey Ellis. As you can see, I think we tried to close out that conversation 3 or 4 times and we could have just continued the chatting. So going into 2021, I'm sure that Mikey will be coming back onto the podcast and we'll continue to understand where he's at with his journey. So to all those people, as you know, you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram. I hope you all have a beautiful, wonderful day. And that's it for me. Much love and care, the Unearthed Man.